Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a concept that's really vital for a balanced life: gentle boundaries.
It's a good one.
Yeah, we've sifted through a range of material looking at how we establish these, personal limits to safeguard our well-being.
Yeah.
Relationships, daily life, all of it.
Right.
And our mission really is to get beyond just the basic idea of saying no.
Yeah, there's more to it.
Exactly. How to set these boundaries effectively, but also importantly with kindness.
That kindness piece is key.
So we'll explore what gentle boundaries actually are, why they're so crucial for managing energy and preventing burnout,
Uh-huh.
and also some of the maybe surprising psychological upsides they offer.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that word boundary, it often makes you think of these rigid walls, impenetrable.
Totally, like shutting people out.
Exactly. But what the sources suggest is something much more nuanced, adaptable even.
Oh.
Think of gentle boundaries more like managed filters, or maybe even bridges for healthy connection.
Filters. I like that.
Yeah. They're personal limits, sure, for our mental, emotional, physical health.
Yeah.
But the focus isn't just exclusion.
Right.
It's more about providing guidelines, how we wish to be treated, how others can interact with us respectfully.
Okay, let's really dig into this gentle aspect then.
Yeah.
Because it's not just having the boundary, it's the way we set it up,
Yeah.
maintain it.
Precisely. The gentle part really highlights the approach, how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's about setting and upholding these limits with, empathy, respect, kindness, but also clarity and communication.
So not harsh or rigid.
Exactly. It contrasts with those more forceful or, inflexible methods. You hear about the firm but gentle approach in parenting.
Yeah, conscious parenting talks about that.
Or even holding space within gentle boundaries. It all kind of points to the same thing. It relies heavily on emotional intelligence.
Okay.
That ability to be aware of our own feelings, manage them, but also communicate our needs, even saying no with understanding and compassion.
So it's less about the refusal itself.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's more about the intention, maybe saying yes to ourselves.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Gentle boundaries aren't just about what we're saying no to. They are actually a positive affirmation, a way of saying yes to our own needs, our core values, our well-being.
Prioritizing.
Yes. It's about actively protecting those personal resources, time, energy that get depleted so easily. It's about clearly defining how we expect to be treated and, creating environments around us that feel safe and predictable, secure.
Okay, let's explore why they're so vital then. One thing that really jumped out was this idea of energy protection. I think everyone gets that feeling of being just drained.
Oh, absolutely. It resonates because it's true. Our personal energy isn't infinite, right? It's a finite resource.
Definitely not infinite.
No.
Yeah.
And gentle boundaries, they act as these really crucial tools for managing and conserving that energy. When we consistently overextend or habitually say yes to things that stretch us too thin, or just neglect to protect our time and space, we inevitably head towards exhaustion. A lack of clear, effective boundaries is like a direct path to feeling emotionally depleted.
And that brings us straight to burnout, doesn't it? It seems like gentle boundaries are a big part of prevention there.
They are, very much so. The link between weak or porous boundaries and burnout is actually quite strong in the research. Burnout, that lovely combination of emotional exhaustion, cynicism, feeling less effective.
Yeah.
It often comes from taking on way too much responsibility, letting work and personal life just blur together completely.
Which is easy to do now.
So easy. And the emotional drain that follows. Even things like compassion fatigue and helping professions, that's linked to inadequate boundaries too.
Okay.
Gentle boundaries provide that necessary structure, that separation. They let us manage our energy, prioritize self-care, which are fundamental for preventing burnout.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and some studies even show that blurred work-life boundaries predict negative changes in happiness, specifically because of increased emotional exhaustion.
Wow.
So it's not just the workload itself, though that's part of it. It's often our inability to protect our resources because the boundaries aren't strong enough.
It's fascinating that it goes beyond just managing our energy. You mentioned it's tied to our sense of self-respect too.
It really is. Beyond just conserving energy, boundaries are absolutely fundamental to our personal integrity, our overall well-being.
How so?
Well, they prevent us from feeling used or disregarded or constantly taken advantage of. Setting and upholding boundaries is actually a core part of self-care.
Okay.
When we repeatedly ignore our own limits, it just breeds resentment, doesn't it? And that is so damaging to a relationship.
Yeah, that hidden resentment.
Exactly. So gentle boundaries aren't just about, feeling comfortable in the moment. They are truly foundational for sustainable well-being and for healthy, balanced relationships.
This all makes a lot of sense logically, but what about the actual um, psychological benefits? It's got to be more than just feeling less tired, right?
Oh, absolutely, much more. The positive effects ripple out way beyond just energy levels.
Okay.
Setting healthy boundaries leads to some pretty profound psychological benefits. Stuff that significantly boosts our mental health, how we see ourselves, our overall life balance.
Right.
And honestly, understanding these advantages can be a really powerful motivator for actually developing this skill because it is a skill.
Okay, so what are some of these key psychological perks we should be aware of?
Well, first and maybe foremost, gentle boundaries play a huge role in reducing stress, anxiety, and that emotional exhaustion we talked about.
How does that work?
A lot of the stress and anxiety we feel often comes from having inadequate boundaries, right? We end up taking responsibility for other people's emotions, their thoughts, even their actions.
Stuff we can't control.
Exactly, things that are ultimately outside our control. By setting clear limits, we can reduce that feeling of overwhelm, manage stress better, and actually feel more grounded in the present. Boundaries act like a buffer against that chronic stress that comes from feeling obligated or overextended, or just like you have no control. Think about it, clear limits mean less ruminating on what everyone else expects.
That makes total sense. It's like creating a bit of personal sanctuary.
Precisely. And it goes further in protecting us from emotional exhaustion and just overload.
Okay.
Boundaries create that vital separation. They stop us from just absorbing everyone else's emotional state or getting totally depleted by endless demands on our emotional resources.
The emotional sponge thing.
Right. And research links that lack of boundaries, especially the work life, blur directly to emotional exhaustion. Setting appropriate limits creates that necessary space. It's even protective for our nervous system regulation. It helps us stay within our window of tolerance, prevents that feeling of being overwhelmed that can tip us into anxiety or shutting down.
That sounds incredibly valuable. What about how we see ourselves? Does it impact self-esteem?
Hugely. The act of setting boundaries itself is deeply tied to self-perception.
Really?
Yeah. Fundamentally, it's an expression of self-respect, self-worth in action.
Okay.
When we define and assert our limits, even gently, we're basically communicating how we expect to be treated. And in doing that, we affirm our own value. Consistently setting and maintaining boundaries. That leads to enhanced self-esteem. Think of each boundary upheld as like a little deposit in your self-respect bank account.
Huh. I like that analogy.
It reinforces that internal view. I am worthy of respect and consideration.
And confidence. Because saying no can feel really hard sometimes.
It can. It really can. But practicing that skill, saying no when you need to, even if it feels super uncomfortable at first, that actually builds confidence over time. It's about identifying your needs and then finding the courage to assert them. Gently but firmly. It builds that sense of personal agency, like, I can manage this.
Right.
Assertiveness, which is key for communicating boundaries, is directly linked to increased confidence.
This is also connected. You mentioned authenticity earlier, too. How do boundaries help us be our true selves?
They're absolutely essential for authenticity. Really.
Why is that?
Because they create the psychological space we need to express ourselves genuinely, without constantly worrying about being criticized or feeling like we have to conform to fit in. When we live aligned with our core values, which is a huge part of setting meaningful boundaries, it just promotes a more authentic way of being.
Okay.
Boundaries help us define who we are in relation to others. They let us preserve our unique identity instead of getting lost in everyone else's needs and demands.
It sounds like these gentle boundaries really do have a massive impact, even spilling over into things like work-life balance.
They really do. The positive effects just keep expanding outwards. They significantly influence the quality of our relationships and our overall life balance. Right. Think about relationships. Healthy boundaries are foundational for building and keeping strong, fulfilling connections.
How so?
By clarifying expectations and reducing misunderstandings, they prevent that slow buildup of resentment that can poison things.
Yeah, we talked about that.
They foster mutual respect, where everyone's needs and limits are actually acknowledged. Plus, how people react to your boundaries, that's a really useful filter.
A filter.
Yeah, it helps you see who respects you versus who just wants compliance.
That's a great point. It helps identify who the truly respectful people are in your life.
Exactly. And then Work-life balance. Boundaries are absolutely critical there.
Uh-huh.
They provide the structure needed to separate professional duties from personal time and space. They stop work from constantly creeping into your rest, your family time, your
The
hobbies.
always-on culture.
Precisely. That separation is vital for preventing burnout and protecting mental health. The structure itself seems to be psychologically protective. It reduces the cognitive load, the emotional labor of constantly switching gears or feeling on call.
Right.
And that structure fosters a sense of security, predictability, which eases stress.
So it all comes together to boost overall well-being.
Precisely. It's cumulative. Reduce stress, better self-esteem, more authenticity, stronger relationships, better work-life balance. It all adds up to greater overall well-being, more happiness, more life satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
When you operate within your own boundaries, you can actually put your time and energy towards the stuff that genuinely matters to you, that aligns with your values.
Yeah.
And the benefits feed each other, like a positive feedback loop. Less stress means more energy for self-reflection, which boosts authenticity, and so on. It's proactive, not just reactive.
This has been so illuminating. Okay, so how do
Thank
we actually start figuring out what our personal boundaries are? It's not always obvious, is it?
No, definitely not always clear at first. And the absolute bedrock for healthy boundaries is self-reflection. You really can't communicate limits effectively if you don't know what they are.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So it involves tuning into your internal world, exploring your needs, your feelings, your desires, identifying your core values, clarifying expectations, and noticing what triggers those feelings of discomfort or stress.
And you mentioned core values before. Why are they so central to boundaries?
Identifying core values is super important because your authentic boundaries really need to align with what you hold most dear, what truly matters to you.
Okay.
Knowing your values acts like a compass. It
Yeah.
guides you on where boundaries are most needed and gives you a solid why for upholding them, makes it feel less arbitrary.
Right, it's not just a random rule.
Exactly. There are even exercises you can do for values clarification. When boundaries are rooted in your values, they feel essential. Easier to defend, both internally against guilt and externally against pushback.
So knowing what's truly important, what about our actual needs? How do we get clearer on those?
We need to think about needs across different areas. Physical needs like rest, space. Emotional needs, respect, validation. Mental needs like focus, autonomy.
Mhm.
Focus on what you require to feel safe, respected, fulfilled, happy, healthy. Ask yourself, what recharges me? What makes me feel devalued? What environment helps me thrive?
And recognizing when we've hit our limit. That can be subtle sometimes.
It can be. Recognizing personal limits means paying attention to your thresholds for energy, physical, emotional, mental.
Okay.
Become attuned to when you start feeling depleted or overwhelmed. Notice your capacity for time commitments, energy output, allocating resources. When do you get irritable? When does your energy dip? What interactions leave you drained?
You also mentioned tuning into our body's signals. That sounds key. Emotions, physical feelings.
Absolutely key. Often, the very first clue that a boundary needs attention comes through these signals, sometimes before our conscious mind even catches up.
Like what kind of signals?
Yeah. Feelings like discomfort, stress, resentment, anger, frustration, anxiety, or just feeling drained. These can all signal a boundary was crossed or that one is needed.
Yeah.
The trick is to pay attention without judging yourself for feeling that way. Treat them as data.
Data, not problems.
Exactly. And your body gives feedback too. Physical tension, shoulders, jaw, a knot in your stomach, fatigue. These can all indicate you've reached or gone past a limit.
Right.
Practices like mindfulness, body scans, they really help build that somatic awareness. It's about integrating mind and body.
So what are some practical ways to actually do this self-reflection? Any specific exercises?
Yeah, there are several good ones. Journaling is powerful. Regularly writing about experiences, feelings, values helps uncover patterns.
Mm-hmm.
You could even keep a specific boundary journal. Log situations where boundaries felt challenged or respected. Track your energy after different interactions.
That sounds useful.
Guided questions can also structure it. Prompts about values, needs, limits, comfort levels, emotional cues, past patterns. Visualization can be good too. Picturing your boundaries, maybe using a boundary wheel or drawing a boundary circle. And there are even personal boundary inventories or assessments you can find. Gives a structured overview.
Right.
But the main thing is, it's an ongoing process, not one and done. Boundaries evolve as we grow, as life changes, as relationships shift. What's okay today might not be tomorrow.
So regular check-ins.
Exactly. Regular self-reflection and being willing to adjust over time.
Okay, so once we have a clearer sense of our boundaries, how do we actually communicate them?
Mm.
Especially that gentle no. That feels like a major hurdle.
You're right. Communication is where the rubber meets the road, and that gentle part really comes into play here.
Uh-huh.
It takes a blend of assertiveness and empathy, stating limits clearly but respectfully. Learning to say no politely but firmly is a core skill.
Let's break down assertiveness with empathy. That sounds like a tricky balance.
It can feel tricky. Assertiveness basically means expressing your feelings, thoughts, needs, limits openly, honestly, appropriately, while also respecting the other person's rights and feelings.
The middle ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not passive, not aggressive. It relies on clarity, direct, unambiguous messages.
Okay.
Now, empathy is what brings the gentleness. Acknowledging the other person's feelings or perspective when it's appropriate, that can really soften the delivery.
How might that sound?
Things like, I understand this might be disappointing, or I appreciate you thinking of me. It shows consideration even while you hold the line. The ideal tone is kind and firm, respectful demeanor, no raised voices or blaming. Confident body language helps to eye contact, calm posture.
Right.
And a cornerstone is using I statements, focusing on your feelings and needs, not accusing them.
Can you give an example structure?
Sure. A really useful one is, I feel emotion when situation behavior because reason impact. What I need is boundary request.
I feel overwhelmed when I get messages late at night because I need downtime. What I need is to only handle urgent things after 8 p.m. Something like that.
Perfect. Clear, focused on your experience and need.
That's really practical. What other specific techniques or phrases work for a polite refusal?
Okay, several things help. Clarity and directness are still number one. Be unambiguous. Avoid hedging or being wishy-washy that just invites pushback.
Get to the point.
Yes. Brevity helps too. Keep it concise. A brief reason might be okay sometimes, but avoid long justifications or apologies. Over-explaining weakens the boundary.
No, is a complete sentence.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Starting with gratitude can soften it too. Thanks so much for the invite, or I really appreciate the offer. It separates the no from the person.
Good tip.
Offering alternatives can be useful. I can't do Friday, but how about next Tuesday? But be careful. Only offer what's genuinely okay for you. Don't create false hope.
Right.
And timing matters. Try to respond promptly if you can. If you need time, just say so, but make sure you follow up. And remember, it's a skill. It gets easier with practice. Start small in lower stakes situations to build confidence.
Yeah.
It might feel awkward at first. That's normal.
Okay, this is great. Now, how do these gentle boundaries actually look in, real life, in different relationships? It can't be the same everywhere.
Absolutely not. The core principles are the same, but the application definitely needs tailoring.
Right.
Boundaries are vital everywhere. Work, family, friends, romance, for health and respect. But the specifics, the communication style, that varies.
Yeah.
Ideally, you start setting them early on.
Let's start with professional boundaries. That seems like a minefield for a lot of people.
It really can be. The workplace often tests boundaries with expectations around availability, workload. So setting clear professional boundaries is crucial for preventing burnout, protecting well-being. Think about time boundaries, work hours when you respond to emails, workload boundaries, feeling okay to say no to tasks beyond your capacity or role, emotional boundaries, limiting negativity, staying professional, intellectual boundaries, respecting different views, even physical space, your stuff, your role clarity.
So how do you do that effectively?
Strategies like blocking time on your calendar,
Yeah.
clearly communicating your availability, politely declining tasks by explaining the impact on priorities, talking to your boss about workload, creating separation if you work remotely, maintaining professional decorum.
Okay. What about family? That feels even trickier sometimes, with all the history and emotions.
You hit the nail on the head. Family boundaries can be really challenging. Emotional ties, history, ingrained patterns, cultural expectations, and guilt. Guilt is a big one here.
Yeah.
Common areas: emotional sharing, what you're okay discussing, not taking responsibility for others' feelings, physical space and touch, time commitments, visits, calls, money matters, privacy, parenting choices, enabling unhealthy behaviors.
So many potential areas.
Right. Effective strategies involve clear communication, but with love and empathy. I statements are crucial. Consistency. Maybe practice beforehand. Acknowledge family values, but assert your needs. Start small. Anticipate pushback. Plan consequences. Be flexible on soft stuff, but firm on hard boundaries.
Okay. And friendships. We want to be good friends, but not get drained.
Exactly. Friendships need balance and mutual respect. Boundaries prevent resentment. Common areas are emotional support, how much venting is okay, reciprocity, gossip, time and availability, contact frequency, honoring plans, physical touch preferences, money, respecting different opinions.
How do you handle that gently?
Honest, direct communication. Be clear about availability. Politely decline if needed. Address issues directly with the friend. Be consistent. Maybe limit time with draining friends. Assess the balance. Is it reciprocal?
Makes sense. And finally, romantic relationships. Boundaries seem foundational there.
Absolutely foundational. For trust, mutual respect, keeping your individual identity, preventing codependency.
What areas are key?
Emotional boundaries, sharing feelings, taking responsibility for your own emotions, respecting their perspective. Physical boundaries, space, affection, sleep preferences. Sexual boundaries, clear consent, desires, limits. Time boundaries, balancing togetherness and individuality. Intellectual boundaries, respecting beliefs. Financial boundaries. Digital privacy.
How do you navigate that?
Early conversations about expectations are great. Open, honest discussion, I statements. Respecting autonomy and space. Consistency. Handling violations constructively, being willing to negotiate the soft stuff, but holding firm on non-negotiables.
So it's always adapting the communication, but staying true to the need.
Exactly. The gentle approach might look different, but the need for the boundary remains. Situational awareness is key. Ultimately, boundaries define the terms of engagement and foster respect, trust, and balance in all relationships.
This gives such a great overview of how it plays out. Now let's tackle those inner hurdles, the stuff that makes it so hard to actually set the boundary, like guilt or fear of conflict.
Ah, yes. The internal landscape, super critical. Because even when you know boundaries are good, these feelings can stop you in your tracks.
Let's start with guilt. It feels so common.
It is incredibly common, and it's important to normalize it. Feeling guilty is a normal reaction, especially if you're new to this or maybe a bit of a people pleaser.
Right,
But, and this is key, feeling guilty doesn't automatically mean you did something wrong.
right.
You need to explore the source. Is this guilt coming from violating your core values? Or is it pressure, fear, this belief that putting yourself first is selfish?
Differentiating the source.
Exactly. Is it appropriate guilt? You actually caused harm. Or inappropriate guilt? You're just taking care of yourself. And separate your guilt from their reaction. Their disappointment is their responsibility.
That's hard to remember sometimes.
It is. Reframing helps. See boundaries as self-care, self-respect, necessary for healthy relationships, not selfish. Challenge those old messages. Practice self-compassion. Sometimes guilt just means you're growing, challenging old patterns.
What about the fear of conflict
Yeah.
or rejection? That can be paralyzing.
Totally paralyzing. Many of us avoid limits just to dodge arguments or negative reactions. It helps to reframe conflict. See it not as inherently bad, but as maybe necessary, honest communication. Disagreement happens.
Right.
Avoiding the conversation doesn't make conflict go away. It usually just delays it and lets resentment build.
True.
And the rejection fear. Remember, healthy, respectful relationships can withstand boundaries. If someone rejects you for setting reasonable limits, well, that says more about them or the relationship's health than about you.
So boundaries can be diagnostic.
Exactly. A diagnostic tool for relationship health. Persistent violations signals lack of respect, maybe incompatibility. Think of boundaries as a filter for mutual respect, not just compliance.
Okay.
Build confidence by starting small. Use calm assertiveness. Some therapeutic models even talk about acknowledging the fearful parts of you, offering reassurance as you set the boundary.
So we've set the boundary, maybe dealt with the guilt.
Hmm.
But what if someone pushes back or just ignores it? How do we respond then?
It's realistic to expect pushback sometimes. When it happens, the goal is to stay calm and firm.
Easier said than done.
Definitely. Avoid getting sucked into arguments or feeling like you need to justify yourself endlessly.
Wow.
The broken record technique can help calmly repeating the boundary as needed.
Just keep stating it.
Calmly, yes. Consistency is absolutely vital. If you're inconsistent, you teach them the boundary is optional.
Right.
And boundaries need meaningful consequences. Otherwise, they're just suggestions.
So what kind of consequences?
Things within your control. Not trying to change them, but stating what you will do.
Right.
If this happens again, I will need to end the conversation, leave, etc. Communicate them clearly, then follow through.
Okay.
Try to detach emotionally from their reaction. Their feelings are theirs. Assess the pattern. Is it a one-off or persistent?
And if it's persistent?
If it's persistent and harmful, despite communication and consequences, you might need to adjust the relationship. Limit contact or even end it if safety or respect is consistently compromised. And seek support. Don't go through it alone.
Making boundaries last sounds like it requires ongoing effort. It's not just setting it once.
No, definitely not. It's maintenance. And consistency is job one.
Why so crucial?
Because reliable upholding sends a clear message, reinforces the expectation. Inconsistency teaches people they can ignore it.
Okay.
And like we just said, boundaries need meaningful consequences. Without them, they lack teeth. Just suggestions. Communicate them. Follow through. Focus on actions you will take. That reinforces your agency, builds self-trust, and trust from others who learn the rules.
But does that mean boundaries have to be totally rigid? No flexibility?
That's a great question. No, healthy boundaries aren't necessarily rigid. Life changes, relationships evolve, our needs shift.
Oh, so how do you know when to be firm versus flexible?
You need discernment. Think about hard versus soft boundaries. Hard boundaries are non-negotiable, tied to core values, safety. They need unwavering consistency.
Okay.
Soft boundaries might be more about preferences or situational needs. They can allow for more flexibility, compromise, know your non-negotiables.
Distinguish healthy compromise from self-abandonment.
Exactly. Flexibility shouldn't cost you your self-respect or safety. Cultural context might play a role here too.
And you mentioned self-compassion earlier. Seems important here too.
Absolutely vital for making boundaries last. This whole journey is challenging. It's ongoing learning. Mistakes happen. Discomfort is common. Self-compassion means kindness, understanding towards yourself. Acknowledge the difficulty without harsh self-criticism. Forgive imperfections.
Treat yourself like you treat a friend learning something hard.
Precisely. And remember, boundary setting is self-care, so make sure your basic needs, rest, nutrition, movement, mental breaks are met. That gives you the energy to uphold them. And celebrate your progress. Every boundary set is a win.
This has been such a rich discussion, a really thorough deep dive into gentle boundaries. To just quickly recap, what are the absolute key principles listeners should take away?
Okay, well, fundamentally, gentle boundaries are about protecting your well-being, but doing it with both kindness and clarity. That's the core.
Right.
And that requires self-awareness, knowing your limits and needs. It requires assertive communication, but blended with empathy. You need to adapt your approach for different relationships, navigate those internal hurdles like guilt and fear, and then consistently maintain the boundaries, knowing when to be flexible and practicing self-compassion throughout.
And the benefits really go way beyond just, avoiding arguments or feeling less stressed.
Oh, absolutely. Gentle boundaries are not selfish. They are essential. Essential for preserving your energy, preventing burnout, maintaining mental and emotional health, and building healthier, more authentic relationships.
It's empowering.
It really is. They empower you to reclaim control, move towards balance, and really define how you want to engage with the world.
That's a really powerful message. As we wrap up then, what's one final thought, something provocative maybe, you'd like to leave listeners to mull over?
Okay. How about this? Consider just one area in your life right now where implementing even a slightly gentler boundary could create more space, more ease, more well-being for you. What's one small, manageable step you could realistically take this week towards making that boundary a reality?